After all that practice, hopefully you understand how to identify JSON components and how to traverse the JSON object tree so you can extract out the values that we care about. Transforming a string of JSON into a live JSON object or JSON array requires parsing. Now, parsing is a deep part of computer science, and it basically means that the computer reads some text written in a language it knows and then transforms it into another more useful representation, like a JSON object that we can call methods on and then extract the data that we need from it. Now, we know how to parse JSON in our heads by identifying the key value pairs and traversing them, but we need to learn how to apply that same process in our Java code. So let's talk about it. All right, so I've switched over to my web browser and I'm looking at the official Android documentation at developer.android.com. Fortunately, there's a class called JSON object that makes it easy to convert a simple string of JSON into a much more intelligent object, an object that knows about the keys it contains and how to access their accompanying values. If we scroll down to the summary section, we can review the available constructors that we could use to create an instance or object of the JSON object class. Here we go. This is the specific constructor that we want. It allows us to construct a JSON object by passing in a single string of JSON containing the raw JSON. Now we see that we have a rather large set of getter methods that we can call on a JSON object instance to retrieve the values associated with certain keys. Now, as you already know, there are various JSON components ranging from basic data types like integer to larger data types like JSON objects and JSON arrays. So for example, if you wanted to extract an integer, you could call the getInt getter method, passing in the name of the key here as a string. Now we have a similar pattern for getting a double or getting a string. For the larger JSON components, you could call something like getJSONArray to get the JSON array mapped by its key. Notice that the data type returned by this getter method is a JSON array type. And likewise, you can call getJSONObject to get a JSON object back. Notice again that the data type returned here is a JSON object. Let's click in a little deeper. Now note that anytime we try a GET request on a JSON object, the requested key might not exist, in which case the request will actually result in a JSON exception, which we'll need to catch and deal with. Alternatively, there are these opt methods that can be called on a JSON object, where opt stands for optional key value pair. These methods get the corresponding value for a given key, but return null if the value doesn't exist. Let's parse this little snippet of JSON. We've got this root object with one key called candies. The key corresponds to an array, here because of those brackets, those square brackets, which contains another JSON object here within these curly braces. Now, this inner object contains two keys, one of which is name, which corresponds to the string value jelly beans, and another key called count, which corresponds to the integer value of 10. Now let's review what the traversal paths would look like if we wanted to extract out the data mapped by these keys. So for the data jelly beans, we want to start at the root of the JSON payload, here at the root. Then we're going to go and index in using the key candies, which is going to be returning us a JSON array. Then we want to get the first element of the array, which is going to be this single JSON object. And then we simply get the string value for the name key, which in this case is jelly beans. Now, the traversal path to get the value for count. Similarly, we start at the root, then we're going to go and key value index using the key candies back into the JSON array, and then we want to get that first element out of the array, which is a JSON object, and then we're going to key value index to grab the value represented by the key count, which in this case is an integer of the value 10. Now we want to take this traversal path process and map it to statements that we can write in Java code. So let's go and take a look. So let's say we were given a string containing this JSON here on the left. Well, actually more likely we'd receive a compacted version, which is exactly the same, just with all the white space removed and all the quotes escaped. When we mean by escaped, it means by adding a backslash character in front of it, since you can't have quote marks in the middle of a string. Otherwise, how would you know when the string was done? Now we can turn this candy JSON string variable into a live JSON object by passing the string into the JSON object constructor. Now this JSON object has done all the work of parsing the JSON string for us. It now knows what keys it contains and all sorts of useful methods. For instance, on this root object, let's call getJSONArray to find the array nested within the root object with the candies key. Now, we can store this in a variable named candiesArray with data type JSONArray. Now, the JSONArray class exposes a method called getJSONObject to access an object at a specified index position. So we can get the 0th JSON object in that array, which means the very first one in the list. And then we can store this first element in the first candy variable of type JSONObject. Since we want to find the attributes within the first candy JSON object, we can call the method getString to extract the primitive value associated with the key name, in this case, jelly beans. Similarly, we can call the getInt method on the first candy JSON object to extract the primitive integer value with the key count, in this case, the value 10. In this next quiz, I'd like you to read through the linked tutorial on JSON parsing in Android. Now this example will be a little bit more complicated than the candies example we walked through together, but I want you to try and understand as much as you can. Specifically, try and read and understand the main activity.java code. Check here when you're done.